All right, everybody, welcome. We're back on our Sunday night study, and we're doing a topic today that's called Do Business Until I Come. And this is something that's been on my mind a lot as of late. And it's mostly triggered just by all the things that are going on in the world. I mean, we're told that the things are going to get worse and worse, and we're seeing that um, manifestly so. And so we're going to be talking about how do we live in this world that we know is going to pass away. As Mike talked about this morning, we know eventually the persecution will increase and things will fall apart, and the Lord will have to bring this all to a crescendo, to a peak, to hand things over to Christ and his Christ to usher in that 1,000-year reign. But we don't know when that's going to be. We just don't know. And so how do we conduct ourselves in the meantime? And we're going to see that Christ gives us an example, and his command is do business until I come, or occupy till I come, as the King James says. So we're going to talk about what that is, practically how to apply it, and then spiritually what that means to all of us. And when I started writing this, it gave me a lot of peace about just how to go about things, and I hope it'll do the same for you. So here we go. The way to Christ is exceedingly narrow, and there are few, very few, that will find it in this life. This is true for every topic in Scripture that you can find. There's always two sides of the road, and we only find the narrow way by falling off both sides. Well, I know where that ditch is, and I know where that ditch is, and so the middle is somewhere between those two. And we can learn from others' experience and the Scriptures that will tell us where those ditches are, so we can quit falling into them. This is Matthew 7:13 and 14. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. So taking that principle, pretty much what you're seeing on the news, hearing in churches, reading online, whatever sources of information are out there, that is the broad way. That is what is being proclaimed. The narrow way is not being proclaimed. And that's what we're here to hear about tonight, is that narrow way that most people have no interest in. So on the topic of how to conduct ourselves in a physical world that is growing worse and worse by the day, which we know is going to come to an end. So on that topic, we're going to look at some examples of what's going on. Just in June, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that same-sex couples can now be legally married. On ESPN, the large sports cable and satellite company gave their Courage Award to a man who's living his life as a woman. That's the world's idea of courage. And now I was shocked to see that a growing number of children are being given hormone blockers to start their gender transition as young as 9 years old. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are becoming normal, and if you don't support those, you're going to be persecuted. On the financial front, there's more debt than ever in the world that mankind has ever had in history, and it's growing at an alarming rate. And I'm a finance guy by trade. That's what I studied in college. It's what I do for a living. And so I'm aware that the tools that people are using, the governments of the world, to solve these problems are tools that God says will not work in the long run. You can't solve your problems through increasing measures of debt. And that's what we're doing. So rather than living within means, having fiscal discipline, doing things the right way, leaders all over the world are just spending more and more to go deeper and deeper into debt. And then we see the growing terrorism and violence and all manners of evil that is plastered over every news channel. Whether it's things like you've got natural disasters in Fukushima, you've got earthquakes, we've never had them before. I mean, you can just go on and on and on and on. Children, which are basically ruling over their parents now, it's become taboo to discipline your children. I mean, we could just talk for hours about all the evils in the world. And these are the things that concern us, that make us think, Lord, is the time at hand? Because it's looking really bad. And all of this has been prophesied in Isaiah 3:12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, those who lead you cause you to err and destroy the way of your paths. And this is what's happening on a family level all the way to a country level. The leaders are, women and children. 2 Timothy 3:13. But evil men and impostors or seducers will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. You can take any topic in the world, whether it's health or education or religion or science, and there is so much deception that the masses believe is truth. And Mike gave a number of those examples this morning on his study. And it's just you're persecuted or called a crackpot or conspiracy theorist to even question what is being put out there as truth. 2 Timothy 3:1, but know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. I mean, just watch the news and what is happening in ever-increasing measures. People loving themselves, and we're praising them for that. Lovers of money, the way that Wall Street just sabotaged people's retirements for their own greed and made more money out of it. Proudly blaspheming the name of God, denouncing anything that's godly. Children being disobedient to parents and parents being forced to yield to it. It's just unthankful, unholy, entitledness, on and on and on it goes. So that's the outward world. And when we can see that, we can look that within our own selves, that same spirit is in us when we're walking according to the flesh. And the Lord gives us those outward examples to show us what is inside of us and must be burned out. If we only keep pointing the finger outward, we'll never learn where the true judgment is going to happen, that it's in our own hearts and minds. Unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. We're all going to live by every one of those words, and we have to come out of it. And then we will be fit to take the speck from our brother's eye and to, at our appointed time, whenever the Lord brings that, to bring the world into submission to God's rules. So all this evil and corruption is going to continue to increase until God's appointed time to turn the kings of this world over to our Lord and his Christ. And now the same thing is true on a spiritual level. We will all continue in our disobedience and our rebellion until the day of the Lord comes in our own life. And the Lord says, this is going to stop now. And he starts to judge us. And he puts us through hard times and difficult things that makes us that pure gold and refines us. So the same thing he's doing within each of our lives now as the elect being judged, so too will he do to the outward world in due time. And Mike did a study on this topic of when the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Christ. And always remember, there's a physical and there's a spiritual application. If you lose the spiritual and only focus on the physical, you'll stop progressing. You'll regress. But you can't deny either one. You've got to see both. So seeing all this evil and knowing that the end will come, it makes us see the vanity of it all. And this is partly what Solomon is doing in Ecclesiastes. He's pointing out the vanity and futility of this life. And it's a very sobering book. If you've never read it and gone through it, it'll really take the edge off of your love of things for the world. And I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven, this burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed, all is vanity and grasping for the wind. Keep in context, this is a man who was the richest man to ever live. He had everything his flesh and his carnal mind could desire. Money, wisdom, fame, knowledge, wealth. I mean, just everything at his disposal. And after he lived that life of excess, this is what he comes to see. Is he's like, it's vanity, it's grasping for the wind. What you have is going to be taken from you and given to another who didn't work for it. They're not going to appreciate it. I mean, he just goes through the list. So it's all quite depressing. And it certainly does not motivate the carnal mind to cheerfully labor away to build anything on this earth that's only going to be destroyed in due time. And so God is well aware of the effect that these truths will have on us. Therefore, he gives us commands on the other side of the road, the other side of the narrow way, to help balance our perspective. So we all start off at first in this life with this just blind, youthful optimism. And we're excited about stuff of the flesh. We love the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Kind of that the world is your oyster type of a thing. And we labor with all of our heart in our own way, everyone at a different level and scale, in order to store up treasures on earth. It could be physical riches, health, fitness, beauty, fame, your own personal knowledge. I mean, now people even take pride in building these virtual worlds on video games. It's just, it doesn't matter what the application is. It's storing up in this vanity system. It's all vanity. And in due time, God shows us the vanity of this, and we start to see that it's not as valuable as we thought it was, that it's not as valuable as we thought it was, and we fall off the other side of the road into this lascivious laziness and apathy. And we go, well, if the Lord's going to destroy it anyway, if that's all vanity, forget it. I don't need it. And we become kind of flippant about it. And this is all under the guise of being, quote, more spiritual. We actually become disobedient through our poor stewardship of physical things. So yes, it was wrong that we were idolizing and worshiping these things, but it's equally wrong to completely neglect and cast them off and not plan or do diligent things with what's put in front of us. It does not matter how bad it may look, how bad the world looks. We do not know when the end will come. We have to keep saying that and reminding ourselves, because there's so many prognosticators, so many people predicting the end and pointing to, oh, it's going to be in October. Oh, it's going to be after this meeting. Oh, it's going to be when this happens. They don't know. They don't know. Yes, it's bad. Yes, it's a problem. Yes, the world is going to reap what it's sowing. It will happen. We just don't know when. And so I just look back at history and say, what was it like during World War II? How bad did that look? How bad did it look like during the Cold War, where we're facing nuclear holocaust of all mankind? I mean, you can continually go through history and find times when things look really bad. And people will say, oh, yeah, well, that was bad, but this is worse and this is why. And you're right, it is worse. It is. But does that mean that the end is going to happen tomorrow or in October? We don't know. And this is Matthew 24:36. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Now remember, he's speaking spiritually and physically here. We don't know when the physical end of the world is. We also don't know when somebody's appointed day of the Lord is for them to be judged and have their heart changed. You don't know. Anybody, the Lord could reach down and say, okay, now I'm going to start dealing with you, and he can drag you. Or he may tarry. We don't know. Tarry meaning he may wait and delay till his appointed time. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Knowing this, we're given these commands in Matthew 6, that we should not store up our treasure on earth. And he says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So if you just take that verse by itself and you read that, what does it make you think? It makes you think, stop saving money, stop having kids, give away all your worldly possessions, and live a life of intentional poverty, because it's all vanity anyway. I mean, if you just take one verse like that, that's what it's going to make you think. And in some way, we all go from loving the world to despising the things of the world, and we fall off the other side of the road. We neglect physical matters, and we stop, this is a biblical phrase, doing business until Christ returns, or occupying until he comes. We're given the following parable as an admonition to be diligent regarding physical matters as well as spiritual matters. The physical always comes first, and it's a shadow to teach us about the spiritual. And this principle is demonstrated in Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So the Lord is intentionally doing everything he's doing in the world for our sakes. And the scriptures will tell us how to interpret and deal with all these different spirits we're being confronted with. 1 Corinthians 15:46. However, the spiritual is not first, but the natural, and afterward the spiritual. So God will teach you what physical marriage is, raising children, going to work, having a job. I mean, if you look at the way Christ spoke in his parables, he used real life things people were doing every day. They were out plowing the field. They were out fishing. They were having people over for dinner. I mean, he's using real life things, and we should be doing the same things in our teaching. And that's why Mike and I are referencing what's going on in the world, because it helps us understand from those physical things that are made the spiritual principles God wants to teach. So let's read the parable here. So starting in Luke 19, starting in verse 12. Therefore he said, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. So he called 10 of his servants, delivered to them 10 minas, it's like coins, money, and said to them, do business until I come. Occupy until I return. And so it was that when he returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. So the key point is here, this master is expecting that his servants went and did something while he was gone. And he's not going to be happy if they didn't do business. Then came the first, saying, Master, your mina has earned 10 minas. And he said to him, well done, good servant, because you are faithful in very little, have authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Master, your mina has earned 5 minas. Likewise he said to him, you also be over 5 cities. Then another came to him, Master, here is your mina, which I have kept away in a handkerchief. For I feared you, because you are an austere man, meaning a hard man. You collected what you did not deposit, and you reap what you did not sow. And he said to him, out of your mouth I will judge you, you wicked servant. You knew that I was an austere, hard man, collecting what I did not deposit, and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not put my money in the bank, that at my coming I may have collected it with interest? And he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him and give it to him who has 10 minas. But they said to him, Master, he has 10 minas. For I say to you that everyone who has will be given, and to him who does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. So remember that everything we've been given by the Lord is a stewardship. Mina is not just money. It's your talents, your family, your health, your skills, your abilities, your spiritual gifts, your worldly physical gifts. All of it is that mina, that stewardship. And we must use whatever the Lord has given us, or he will take it away and give it to someone who else is fearful, or give it to someone else who is faithful, because we are being fearful. And if you look at the world right now, the temptation is to take what you have and just to shut down, to go in your little hole and hide and wait for the Lord to return. And that is what this parable is telling you. Don't do that. Keep doing business. And doing business means all things, not just physical worldly business, but family, studies, spiritual health, evangelism. If your God calls you to go to school or to learn a trade, continue doing all of those things. But Larry Kuhn did an excellent study on spiritual gifts that can be found here. And you can take this exact same principle and apply it spiritually, because we all have a gift God has given us in one form or fashion or another, and we will bury it in the earth and we'll hide it and we'll squander it. And God hates that. He says, no, I gave you this for a reason, as small as it is. If it's just expressing a little gratitude or writing a 2-line email, or however small your gift is or however big it is, you're judged on what you do with what you have, not how much you produce. Anytime the scriptures give us a command or an admonition, it is because we're naturally inclined to do the opposite. The flesh and carnal mind are fearful and tend to take our God-given stewardship and hide it away rather than using it properly. So starting with the physical application to this principle, we'll look at all that is happening in the world, and we're tempted to just to give up. So, why labor for vanity? Why bring children into such an evil world? Kind of the spirit I had was, why go back and finish your degree? Why make this career change? Why do all these things? Now, certainly we don't want to love the things of the world or have it as an idol. The Lord, condemns that, but there is a narrow way of how we are to sharpen our sword and increase our skills and provide for ourselves and our families. And everyone, given your context, it's different. So I'm just speaking of a general principle of just don't see the world going on around you and shut down. Because this is what Solomon also says in Ecclesiastes, the same guy who tells you it's all vanity. He says, he who observes the wind will not sow. He who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her child who is with child, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who was with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. So here in Ecclesiastes, wind and clouds are used in the negative sense to symbolize the trials and troubles of this life. The worst thing for a farmer is terrible storms that destroy their crops. It makes all the work you did, futile. But if he's worried, he's always worried about storms and stops work every time the wind blows or a menacing cloud appears on the horizon, he's never going to sow or reap. A storm may destroy your crops and lead to poverty, but not sowing or reaping will ensure that you do not have crops, and you will surely come to poverty. So to bring this to modern times, if we listen to the cries of the doomsdayers, the preppers, the prognosticators, that's looking at the clouds and regarding the wind. And if we stop sowing and reaping, we'll be paralyzed with fear and cease to do business until Christ comes. We do not know what will prosper, so we must not withhold our hand from sowing. This is when the scriptures say something identically twice, you know it's important. So here in Proverbs 22:13, it says, the lazy man says, there's a lion outside, I shall be slain in the streets. And in 26:13, the lazy man says, there's a lion in the road, a fierce lion in the streets. What this is saying is, it's the same spirit that manifests in spiritual matters as well. We just get this, oh, it's bad out there. No one's going to hear the truth. I'm going to get persecuted. Or, oh, I can't try to, start a business or change jobs or get a different career or do whatever because, oh, it's so bad out there. It's just never going to work. That's an evil spirit telling you that, and it's discouraging and shutting you down from doing what the Lord would have you do to provide for yourself and your family in a way that brings neither riches nor poverty. So I'm not advocating, this isn't a pep rally of sorts to try to get you to go conquer the world. It's just saying, look, go out and do what you need to do to walk that narrow way and have neither riches nor poverty. If that requires some extra time laboring in physical things, so be it. That's what we have to do sometimes. So the majority of people are going to reject the truth. Persecution is out there. And this can be quite discouraging and can lead us to be lazy. We also doubt that God will prosper his word in our own life, and we'll fall into this spiritual laziness. Oh, if I get up and try again, the Lord's just going to knock me down again, so why even get up again? I mean, there's all types of manifestations of this spirit. I've dealt with it in evangelism, as I've been doing all kinds of different things the last few years. Martha can attest to it. People just come into our meetup group and they stay once and they hear what we say and they run off screaming. They don't run off literally screaming, but their jaw hits the floor and they can't get away from us faster. And it's discouraging to sow so much seed and to see so many people come and stick around for a while and just leave, and it kind of makes you want to stop. But then I go read these verses and the Lord's like, no, throw the net out the other side of the boat. You never know what you're going to catch. And so we just keep on, and he's going to get who he wants. And in the process, it's for us. We're learning and developing patience and perseverance and all those good things. And the other motivation for me is that if we don't use what we've been given, it's going to be taken. And so I'm scared of that. And so I want to use what I've been given so that the Lord will let me keep it, because I'd rather have it than not. It's not pleasant to have your spiritual gifts taken from you. So we should not be naive to the evils of the world, and we should recognize that spiritual riches are more valuable than physical riches. It is an exceedingly narrow way, and we must continue to press on as if the world will continue for the rest of our lifetime. We just don't know. And so when you sit down to, like if I knew the world was going to end in 3 months, I wouldn't go back and finish college. I wouldn't go get those new licenses to change careers. I wouldn't do it. So I have to assume I'm going to be here until I'm 80, and I got to have a career and have a job and save a little bit and do those things, all the while knowing that, hey, it's opportunity comes along to be generous or to serve the body or do something that takes the priority, but you have to do these things. Proverbs 12:11, he who tills his land will be satisfied with bread, but he who follows frivolity is devoid of understanding. So tilling your land is about being faithful to what God has given you. Whatever he's given you, till it, sow, reap, plant, weed that garden, take care of it, both physically and spiritually speaking. In Proverbs 28:19, he who tills his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows frivolity will have poverty enough. So it's just saying, just be faithful with what's put in front of you. Get up each day, do what the Lord gives you to give. Don't be fearful or worry or anxious about him collapsing things or the financial system collapsing or there not being food on the grocery shelves next week. Hey, it could happen, but what are we going to do about it? Most of us don't have the ability to move out to a self-sustaining farm and live that kind of life. Most of us have to be in the cities and we're dependent on the system going to keep us, functioning here. And that's just where the Lord has us. We just can't worry. He'll provide for us no matter what happens. We have to till the land God gives us, meaning we must be diligent in all matters, physical and spiritual. So we get the example of the ant. Proverbs 30:25, the ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their food in the summer. So what it's saying is there's not always the opportunity to work, both for physical and spiritual knowledge. So when you have the opportunity, when the fields are white for the harvest, go harvest. If you don't do it, you'll miss out, and you'll find yourself without oil when you need it for your lamps. This is Proverbs 6:6. It says, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides for supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? So these verses have a physical and a spiritual application. The harvest time physically it's while you've got your youth and the ability to labor. One day the time is going to come where you can't, do these things anymore. So you got to do it while you can. You'll bear your yoke in your youth, as we're going to read. It's good and wise to plan for our future, knowing that we'll not be able to work our whole lives. This is Lamentation 3:27. It is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. And the same is true in our spiritual house. We must study to show ourselves approved and store up spiritual riches while you can, because there will be times of famine in your life where you can't spend great amounts of time reading and studying and doing all of this. Sometimes the demands of life crop up and you got to deal with it. And if you've been faithful to store up when you had the time, you'll have something to go get out of the barn to sustain you while you're going through that dark drought. We should also serve others while we can, because there's going to be times where you can't serve others. So when the time is at hand, do whatever's in front of you. Proverbs 6:10, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of hands to rest or to sleep. So your poverty shall come upon you like a prowler or like a bandit, and your need like an armed man. Now there is certainly a difference between sleeping and ceasing to be diligent to watch and obey the Lord, which is a negative thing, versus resting in the Lord and waiting on him. Like Psalms 37:7 says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. I did a study that covers this in somewhat more detail called Rest in the Lord, because there is a time where we still have physical fleshly bodies, and we just get tired. And I mean, I've got my fair share of health issues, and I just got to stop sometimes. You can't do a whole lot. But that's obedience. You're waiting on the Lord, you're resting, you're getting stored up because you know you got to go out and do it again. So don't feel bad that like rest is not evil. And a lot of times we feel this false guilt or conviction when we can't do as much as we want to do. But the key is that we're always diligent in our hearts and minds towards the Lord. You can be the most spiritual thing you can do sometimes is take a nap. I mean, it's all right to rest in the Lord and let Him fight the battles for you. The same spirit of laziness and apathy was present in the early church that Paul ministered unto. Paul and those that labored at his side set a good example to the Thessalonians of diligent labor in physical matters as well as spiritual matters. And that's where we're going to pick up next time and talk about how Paul did this. What did he actually do? What was the example he set? How did he admonish people to conduct themselves? All the while knowing that the time could very well be at hand. And we'll see that it's very encouraging and it reinforces all the points we've discussed up to here. Oh, howdy! Thanks for watching my videos. Did you know we have live Bible studies online every week from several different teachers in our fellowship? Well, you should come join us sometime. You can click right down there and see the study schedule. You can also click right here to sign up for my YouTube channel. See you on the study.